And to our friends at Terra Cultura, I very much look forward to the day when Rabbi Benj and I are going to rent a bus and throw all of our students into it and schlep on up and spend spring break at the farm learning about healing the world and making it a better place. So thank you guys for agreeing to give us a tour of your farm today. And I will stop talking now and hand it over. I'm thankful for all of you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Devorah. And again, welcome everyone. It's so wonderful to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. So do you want to start?
Sure. So I'll give you just a quick, so Terra Cultura, in case you're wondering, is a nonprofit educational eco-arts farm. And we're based in Aromas, which is on California's Central Coast, pretty close to Santa Cruz and Monterey. And our mission, our nonprofit mission, is to strengthen community resilience through education and collaboration around agroecology, sustainable living, and also the arts.
So what does that actually look like, you might ask? So first, we're a farm. We will give you a tour of the farm soon. We use agroecological, no-till, organic farming methods. But we have educational programming also. So we have skill shares and regular volunteer opportunities and workshops here on the land. We also teach out in the community. We teach eco-arts in the local school district, so all the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And we have numerous events, community events here on the land. So we have a monthly writers group, an anti-oppression study group that meets regularly. We do, we showcase local artists and have arts events and salons. What am I missing? Other kind of cultural community activities here on the land.
Yeah, lots of collaborative kind of eco-arts projects in the community. Yeah, you got it. So we take a very integrative approach to our model here, kind of trying to fuse the social and the ecological, the cultural and the environmental. We think we live in a society where those systems we tend to think of them as separate things, and we kind of want to re-explore and regenerate a culture where those are one and the same systems, the social and the environmental. So that's sort of why we integrate the arts and the ecological environmental stewardship here. So our plan is to tell you a little bit about how this all got started, and then we're going to give you a tour of the site. And at the end, we'll have some time to circle back up and answer any questions you might have and have a conversation as well.
And can you guys be sure and let everyone know what your names are?
Oh my goodness.
I'm Travis.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Rachel. We're sisters. They're married. And Jessica and I grew up at Temple Emanuel.
So yeah, Rachel just brought it up. So why we built it? How did we come to the idea of Terra Cultura? So my personal story is before Terra Cultura, I was involved in the fast-paced corporate career world and not loving it at all. Just finding myself exhausted, constantly overwhelmed, anxious, and unfulfilled ultimately. And I've just found myself yearning for, just wanting more than anything to like have a community and to engage with my community. And I wasn't getting that from the corporate world in any way. But coming here and beginning this work has really allowed me to do that, to engage and connect with my community and the environment here, which I see them both as pretty much the same thing. I see the environment as a member of my community. And doing that all in a much more holistic way, which has been so much more rewarding and fulfilling for me. That's my story.
And for me, Terra Cultura was really about kind of the most effective way I could think of to create change in this world, to create the world that I wanted to exist in. So my background is in community organizing. I got my master's in international development, and really just knew I wanted to make a difference. And kind of the more I learned and the more experience I had, I came to realize that a strong, resilient community is the most effective way to create change. Doing some work in international development, it became very clear that communities know exactly what they need and how to make it happen. And so I kind of shifted my focus to working more locally, and was really struck by my organizing work, the ways that, the most successful campaigns, the most successful efforts were all led by a strong community, people who had, really solid relationships with each other, really cared about each other and cared about where they lived in their homes. And so I was really motivated to kind of create and help make communities more resilient, and start making change where we are. Start local seemed to be what made the most sense.
Yeah, and we all have a love for nature and outdoors and gardening. We're newer to farming. We all have a love of arts and culture, and we all have a creative practice, and we all have a love for travel, where we've sort of explored the world a bit and how other people are living, and doing farming and eco villages and ways of collective living and alternative lifestyles. And we wanted to be a part of that movement that we saw as a model for building sort of a microcosm of what the world could be here and now. So even though as a society we're a long ways perhaps from reaching the vision, maybe we can create a little bit and get a taste of it here right now. So I have an arts background. Before coming here, I was living pretty much the opposite as life in the country. I was in New York City for 8 years working in theater, and I believe arts is a really powerful tool for social change. But I was also spending 12 hours a day in a black box theater, and I really wanted to be outside and in the communities. So this was an opportunity for that, to live a more authentic life, more in line with my values. I wanted to be less a part of the problem and be working more towards the solution. So we kind of call this a sandbox, a place to experiment with different models of different ways of sustainable living and environmental stewardship, and incorporating the arts and culture, and to trying to be building a culture or renewing a culture of ecological stewardship.
And you've probably kind of heard sprinklings of this through those stories, but so much of what we do here is inspired by Jewish values. And Rachel and I both grew up at Temple Emanuel-El, and so many of the values we learned growing up from Judaism are incorporated in this. So for me, tikkun olam is kind of probably the biggest one, this commitment to making the world a better place, to always kind of figuring out how to repair the world, how to make it create liberation for all people and beings, and the emphasis on community. Again, I just really always appreciated how important community is in Judaism, and how essential it is that we all look out for each other, whether it be human community, plant community, or animal community, kind of looking at that whole holistic view of our responsibility to each other, and to making sure that we all have what we need to thrive.
You talking about community, I was thinking we grew up going to Camp Swig and Camp Newman, which I think is where we first fell in love with this part of the world, up here on the Central Coast. And then you two went to UC Santa Cruz. But yeah, that community, that ritual, that appreciation of nature. I know we've all been part of collaborations, creative collaborations, and seen collaborative art spaces and communities come together and then sort of fall apart because the neighborhood was gentrifying, and they got outpriced of the neighborhood. And we were really hoping to build something that was more sustainable, kind of a place-based community where we could really explore our connection with nature and with natural cycles. And Judaism, of course, as you all know, is so connected with natural cycles and even sort of agricultural cycles, so many of the holidays. And that's something that I really feel like I didn't fully understand until I was here working the land. And that's been a really cool experience. And the idea of sort of welcoming the stranger, we try to make this kind of a radically inclusive place. Instead of building a wall, building a longer table, kind of radical hospitality here is one of our philosophies. We want it to be sort of a safe haven for anybody who needs it. And that's part of us cultivating resilience for our communities, having enough food for everybody, having enough beds for everybody, having a role for everyone to play. Sort of no matter what your interests are, we hope that there would be some avenue of entrance point here at Terra Cultura.
Well, I'm just keeping an eye on the clock. I wonder if it's about time to show them the farm.
Sounds
Y'all ready
good.
for a tour?
Cool. Should we go get in place?
All right,
All
sounds
right.
good. So Rachel and Travis are gonna go get set up. During the tour, we'll put you all on mute just to make it easier to hear. But if you have any questions or comments or things you definitely want to chat about afterwards, we'll have some time at the end of the tour to answer all those questions. We want to continue this conversation with all of you, so feel free to just type them in the chat. And we look forward to answering them. And yeah, and during the tour, we will show you the farm. So it looks like Rachel is ready out there in the fields. I will be joining her shortly. We should be ready to go. Take it away, Ray.
Welcome to your tour of Terra Cultura. We're really excited to show you around and tell you about some of our environmental stewardship practices we're doing here on the land. But first, I want to set the scene for you and kind of get you oriented in the area. So we're here in San Benito County. As you can see, it's a lot of grasslands and coastal live oak and Monterey pine. We're also here in a town called Aromas. There's about 4,000 people, small town. That's about 30-40 minutes from Santa Cruz, Monterey, San Jose, Hollister, that area. And we are on 5.5 acres that we call Terra Cultura. We're gonna focus mostly on the front 1.5 acres here. And we're gonna do the tour that will show you the Pollinator Garden, the fields where we have our row crops, and the yurts.
Thanks, Rachel. Hey, everybody. We like to start all of our tours with a land acknowledgement, acknowledging the indigenous peoples that stewarded this land for tens of thousands of years before we got here. So we are on the unceded territory of the Ohlone people. As far as we have researched, we believe the Mutsun-speaking Muslim tribe was on this land. So just expressing some gratitude to them for stewarding this place for as long as they did. And also wanted to acknowledge their descendants who are active advocates for the environment in this area. They're incredibly active in fighting for the environment here. We really appreciate them as well.
So when we got to this land, it had been used as a horse property and they raised rabbits and chickens here, except that they were a bit neglected and they had been allowed to overgraze. So they had eaten all of the plants, leaving nothing but sand. So you can see when we got here, and in many areas still, it's this very fine sand like a desert or a beach. So not what you think of when you think of prime agricultural land. Of course, it's on a hill, so we'll tell you about that. And nothing would grow here because the soil had been eroded and depleted of nutrients. The only thing that would grow is a plant called horehound, which the horses didn't like to eat, so they left it, but they ate everything else. So now we've been here about 3.5 years, and you can see there's a lot growing.
We are now standing in our pollinator garden, and this is the first area we started focusing on. This was 2 tons of trash when we arrived, but we cleared that out and then started rebuilding the soil. We'll talk in the fields a little bit more about how we did that. But these pollinators were a really important part of rehabilitating the local ecosystem. And we started with the soil. So our philosophy here is that everything starts with the soil. If you have a healthy ecosystem in the soil, if you have a lot of organic matter and healthy biology in the soil, then you're going to have a healthy ecosystem above the soil as well. It's all incredibly interconnected. But the pollinators are really struggling right now because of pesticide use, because of lack of habitat. They're really struggling, which means that our plants are going to struggle. And so if we can bring back the pollinators, and that's the first step in rebuilding this system. So if you bring back the pollinators, you'll bring back the birds. And if you bring back the birds, it's kind of the first step in rebuilding the ecosystem that existed here before this land was so mismanaged.
So what do we have, Jess? Some goldenrod.
Yeah, we've got some goldenrod and some aster. We got some milkweed, some solidago and coyote mint. And these are all plants we got through a grant with the Residency Society, who's working on rebuilding monarch habitat across the state. So we were really fortunate to get 1,600 plant plugs from the Residency Society to create this monarch habitat. The monarchs are one of those pollinators that are especially endangered right now. So we're really excited to be able to contribute to creating safe spaces for them.
We planted some pollinators here in the garden and also in our fields to attract those pollinators like bees and butterflies and moths to our other growing areas. So we'll show you our fields now. And on the way, you'll see these structures, which were here when we got here, but in a very dilapidated state. They had also been very neglected. We thought we were going to have to demolish them. We didn't think they were, able to be used, except we took a closer look and figured that we should use what we have on site. That's kind of part of our ethos, to use what's here on the land and what's available rather than buy new resources. And these were actually constructed with repurposed materials from construction sites, so that kind of fit right in. So we did some work, we learned how to roof, we learned how to put in a new floor, and now we use these structures a lot. This is our tool shed, this is kind of our office space and community space. We fixed them up real cute, and we used what we had, right? And speaking of using what we have, we don't get a whole lot of rainfall here in California, as you know, but we try to utilize every little drop, and we have these rainwater catchment systems. So the rain collects in the gutters and comes into these rain barrels, and then we can use the rainwater for irrigation. So that's a cool thing that is pretty easy to set up. We also use gray water systems. So our farm sinks, our laundry water, our shower water, all goes into a gray water system that also helps to irrigate. So it's called stacking functions when we're using all of our resources multiple times. I don't know if you can see, but our chickens are hanging out here in our wood pile under our hutch. Our chickens are part of our full systems approach. We like them because they add manure to our soil, which is rich in nitrogen, good nutrients, but they also eat our pests, and they give us eggs, which are delicious. So just wanted to say hello to them. We also have a raised garden beds here. As you can see, our hill is quite steep, this hill that we're on, and accessibility is one of our challenges. So these were designed as a proof of concept to be wheelchair accessible. Our goal is to have these be kind of a microcosm of what we're doing in our fields. So give people an opportunity to get their hands in the dirt, help things grow, kind of understand these systems we're implementing in the fields, but without having to trek all over this hill. So, and they were designed, decorated, and built with the help of local students. We try to kind of incorporate education and the arts into everything we do here. So had a fun community event building these together. Yeah, we work hard to make this really a community space where everyone feels that they kind of have a piece of it, that they've contributed and have some ownership in this project. While we're here, it's a good place to point out the solar grid over here. This is a new addition that we're really excited about. That solar grid is part of our brand new water irrigation system. So it works, the solar power pumps, it powers our pump, which then pumps the water to the top of the hill where we have storage tanks. And then that water is gravity fed to our growing areas and into a drip irrigation system that we'll show you in a minute. And that's all part of a grant. A grant allowed us to do that water project to make it more resource-wise and energy efficient. It was from the California Department of Food and Agriculture. We've gotten several grants from them, and that really helps us implement the climate smart and environmentally friendly practices that we really want to do here.
This is our greenhouse, and this is where all of our sprouts start before we bring them out into the fields. It's kind of the nursery. So in here we've got the beginnings of our winter garden. We've got cabbage and Brussels sprouts and broccoli and cauliflower and other greens. And these will all be brought out in just a couple more days to this area where we harden them off. kind of get them used to being out in the world, bring them out of the nursery. It's kind of like the dorms in college where you're just kind of learning to be a productive member of society before we transplant them out to the fields. And this is all really wonderful because we have some pest issues here, roly-polies and deer and things that like to munch on other insects that like to munch on our plants. And so this kind of allows us to give them a head start, get them a little bit stronger and hardier before we put them out into the world.
So we'll take you over to the fields. We have 2 fields. This is field 1, and we'll take you over to field 2. It's a pretty small area. It's 10 100-foot rows. And this first field we've allowed to be fallow this season. And in our case, that means utilizing a cover crop and planting pollinator plants. The cover crop is putting nutrients back into the soil, like we plant plants that are specifically nitrogen fixers. It acts as kind of a green manure, covering the soil, keeping moisture in the soil, putting nutrients into the soil. And we allow volunteer plants to come up that we might wild forage, but we aren't really harvesting from this field. So you can see that a lot of what you might call weeds are growing, a lot of grasses. And a weed is really just a plant in a place you don't want it. But in our case, we have a little bit of a different attitude about it because even the weeds are doing their part to regenerate the soil. The land kind of knows what it needs. So often, the plants that will grow in depleted soil are adding exactly the nutrients that the soil needs. So we allow natural cycles to kind of take place. We do weed where we're kind of doing more intense cultivation only when the weeds compete with the plants. But often the weeds are helping us by offering ground cover to keep moisture in the soil, by putting nutrients in the soil. So we actually kind of like our weeds. This is the field we're currently cultivating. You can see this aster's blooming like crazy. This is one of those pollinators we got from the Residency Society, doing its job attracting these bees to the field. Like I said, when we first got here, like Rachel pointed out, the whole hillside was just sand and nothing would grow. So the first thing we did was to build up this soil. We started by putting roots in the ground. Erosion was a huge problem. The water would just rush down the hillside, take all of the topsoil with it, dump it into the road. The county had to come by with a plow to scrape the mud out. So one of the first things we did was get roots in the ground, which is so important, as Rachel just mentioned. And the first step in kind of rebuilding the soil, introducing organic matter into the soil. And then we've kind of been alternating between these systems of adding compost and cover crop. We originally built these terraces with eucalyptus trees that were growing on site that we had to take down anyway. So kind of using materials on hand to build up. Beneath this top layer that you're seeing are layers of carbon and nitrogen, so that will naturally compost. So twigs and leaves and branches are the carbon materials, and then we used horse manure and compost, the nitrogen-rich materials, to really rebuild the soil. Let me get you a handful of what the soil looks like here. If you remember the sand we were using, this is what our soil looks like now. So you can see it's much darker, it's holding much more moisture, it's really sticking together better than it was before. And then we have this mulch cover, and the mulch really helps to hold that moisture in. It's a really great way to conserve water and maintain that moisture in your soil, something everyone can do in their own gardens. And talking about water, we've got this drip line here, which is what Rachel was mentioning earlier. This drip irrigation was part of the SWEEP grant that Rachel was talking about. Drip irrigation allows us to conserve water much more than overhead sprinkling, which is what we did before. And we have these soil moisture monitors that we also recently installed. So these go in the soil and they measure the amount of moisture in the soil. And these are actually connected to Wi-Fi, and they communicate to our weather system. And our weather system communicates with the moisture sensors and our irrigation system. So it lets them know how much moisture is in the air, how hot it is, if there's rain in the forecast, and all these pieces together determine how much we need to irrigate. So the plants basically get to tell
our water system how much water they need. It's a pretty cool system. So right now, growing in the fields, we have tomatoes, multiple kinds of squash, pumpkins, curry squash, summer squash, zucchini. We've got some borage growing, some kale and beets that we're hoping will come up soon. And then we'll be planting the beginnings of those starts you saw hardening off outside the greenhouse in these top rows.
Now, I just wanted to point out the horehound, because this is the plant that I was mentioning was the only thing that would grow here when we first got here, because it really likes sandy soil and it tastes bitter, so the horses wouldn't eat it. It's actually very healthy and medicinal, but it tastes really bitter. But the bees love it, so we do let some of it grow, as you can see in our fields, as a pollinator. So Jessica was talking about some of the technology we use. Here's some of our smart systems for the irrigation. And it's interesting because we're trying to, of course, live more simply here on the land. That was a big motivation for us, leaving our comfortable lives and houses and coming to live in yurts and converted rabbit barns. But we're also utilizing the latest technology. Oh, did you mention the kibbutz?
Right, yes, these soil sensors that we are using were developed in Israel on a kibbutz there. So it's especially fun to be able to apply that technology here in California.
So trying to combine that, living simply, living in ways that are more connected with the cycles, natural cycles, and using resources wisely, but also using the latest technology. So hopefully it's the best of both. Let's see, while we're here, this area is going to be an outdoor kitchen. We're building that this winter, and that will be a really cool project for students because they'll be able to be a part of every part of the cycle. From planting starts in the greenhouse, planting them in the field, harvesting them, cooking with them, composting with them, feeding them to the chickens who also create compost of their manure, and all those resources just continue to loop. It's called a closed loop system, because it all comes from our site. Let's see. I'll take you up into the yurt and tell you a little bit more about our programming. And that will be it for our tour. These yurts are really cool structures. We built the platform ourselves, but the yurt is actually a kit that you can buy. And it, kind of like IKEA. It goes up in a day or two with some help. But come on in, they're really cool. So, this is one of the bigger yurts we have on site. And we use it for a lot of things. So this is where we host farm stays. So if you ever come visit us at Terra Cultura, this is where you would stay. And it's a really beautiful space, as you can see, that has everything you need. I actually live in a yurt. It's very comfortable. It's very warm. It's a beautiful round space with a beautiful view of the stars and the moon at night. We also use this space as a classroom sometimes. We host events here. We do workshops and skill shares. We host a writers group, a music jam. We feature local artists and do artist salons and events and performances. We also do retreats. We teach in the local schools. We teach eco arts and eco literacy to every 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade student in the district. So there's lots going on and lots of ways to get involved. So these structures themselves, as I was mentioning, we try to live more simply so that others can simply live, right? So yurts are kind of an eco-friendly structure using much fewer materials than your general structure, and yet they're very comfortable. And they conserve resources. The water is on a gray water system. We use about a third of the power and water of your average household. So that allows us to really conserve resources and live in more eco-friendly ways and kind of be in touch with the natural cycles. I love seeing the moon through the dome at night and knowing kind of where the stars change with the seasons. It's a really beautiful way just to feel more in touch with that and to also still feel warm and cozy. So I hope you enjoyed the tour. We're going to circle back up with you and chat a little bit more and answer any questions you might have. So thank you so much for joining us.
All right, so thank you all so much for coming along on that tour with us. wanted to see if anybody had any questions that came up, but we're also, as soon as Rachel and Travis come back and join us again, we'll be talking a little bit more about kind of where we see Terra Cultura fitting in. But before we get to that, were there any urgent burning questions? Should we just dive in? All right. Oh, where do we sell the farm produce? Good question. Let's see, we just started, we helped to start a local farm stand in our community. Aromas is actually a food desert. The closest grocery store is over 10 miles away, I believe. So we just started a local farm stand at the local Grange and are selling produce there. And we're about to have kind of pay what you can farm stand on site. So that's part of our plans for the fall. But most of our produce is given away to the community at this point. Another question, weather issues. I would say water is our biggest issue and fire is a big concern here in California. I guess that's not really weather, but we kind of have fire season here these days.
Yeah, so the wildfire season is a really interesting one that is new for everyone, obviously. And the water infrastructure project that Rachel was just talking about on the tour has really helped us. Before we did all that infrastructure upgrade, we were using a booster pump that was connected to PG&E. And last year in particular, when PG&E was doing the planned shutoffs, when we lost our power, we also lost our water, which was really scary because they were turning off our power because of wildfire danger. So fortunately for us this year, now our water system is entirely off grid. So if PG&E shuts off our power, we still have water, which is a huge relief for us.
Yeah, but like everywhere in California, we had an incredibly dry winter, and we do a lot to keep the water on site that we have here. We have, in addition to the practices we showed you in the fields, we also have a network of berms and swales, which are kind of like ditches and bumps that slow the water and help it kind of collect and then spread and sink into our soil. So a lot of land, a lot of homes are designed to kind of send the water away down the drains into the sewer system, and we do a lot to keep the water on site. But even with these practices, we're low on water in this region, and so I would say that's our biggest challenge. Some other questions. Let's see, Janice, what you have now seems really well developed. Can you talk about getting from when this was just a dream to the reality you have now? Sure. It was such a project. Let's see, we started dreaming, and the three of us started dreaming about this maybe 10 years ago or more now, and did various research. Travis and I spent a year working on farms all over the world. Rachel did a lot of research on collaborative art projects and urban gardening and intentional communities. And we kind of came together 4 years ago. We all kind of left our more traditional lives, landed with our mother in San Diego. Thank you, Barbara, for a year while we were kind of getting this off the ground. We started off doing pilot projects in Southern California. So we collaborated with Leash Tag and Community Roots Farm and led a number of educational pilot programs there, collaborated with some other farmers down there while we were on a search for the land. And doing a fundraising campaign. Some of you here have supported us in that way throughout, these last 5 years. And we are so grateful to all of you for being part of this community and all of you who helped make this happen. And then we moved on to this land, 3.5 years ago. So it's been a journey. Did either of you want to add to that?
And when we first got here, I think, Rachel, you were talking about it on the tour. It was very rough. It was a totally undeveloped property. You saw the sand. It was the two structures were here on site, but they were very dilapidated, not complete, didn't have roofs or floors really. So it was quick learning curve. I would say we had to learn how to do a lot of things we didn't know how to do really quickly. Like Rachel was saying, like roofing and flooring and a lot of farming and plumbing and electrical work. But that's a challenge that I think the three of us were excited to take on. And, now we're pretty good at those things.
And we had so much help. So many people came here and lended their hands to this land and taught us how to roof and taught us construction skills, friends, and contributed to allow us to make this happen. And so we're just so grateful to it was definitely a community effort. We never could have done it with just the three of us. And so we're so grateful to everyone who's helped us make it happen.
But when we started this experiment, I think we were sort of it was an experiment, is this possible? And we were scared, and it was a big leap of faith. And, we didn't know how to run a nonprofit. We had worked on other farms, but we hadn't run our own farm. And yes, you can figure these things out. There is, starting a nonprofit for dummies. And we've had, as Jessica was saying, incredible mentors willing to share their knowledge. And so that's what we do too, is try to, as we're learning, just be a real open source for what we're figuring out so that other people can live whatever version of this dream they might have.
What's a typical day like for us?
Oh gosh, that is a good question because we obviously have our hands kind of in a lot of different projects. And so it really depends. I might say during a typical week, we try to kind of split our time between the educational programming we're doing during the school year. We're in the classroom, so doing a lot of curriculum development and preparing for being in the classroom, but we always try to get out to the land also. There's a lot of kind of daily land and animal care and maintenance that needs to be happening. What do you all think?
Yeah, I think we wear a lot of hats between managing a nonprofit, running educational programming, and also running a farm. I think it's the right move to say what our average week looks like, because any given day could be completely different.
We're also really involved in the community. So we all sit on different boards and do a lot of volunteering and collaborating. So I'd say a big chunk of our time also that we consider the line between our personal and professional life is maybe a little more blurry than for some people because our mission is community, but it's also our passion. So we do spend a lot of our time just supporting and offering the community whatever they need. Sort of with the pandemic, we shifted a lot of our focus to what people needed around that. Jessica especially was really involved in starting up a new mutual aid program. We were involved in some food distribution and supply distribution and masks. So kind of whatever people need at the time, and it's always changing. And we're always trying to kind of adapt to fit in with what the community is calling for at that time.
Yeah, let's see. Are you a part of WOOF? What a good question.
Good question. So Jessica and I spent a year woofing back in.
Wait, can you explain what woofing is for some of our people who are watching who have no idea why you're talking about being dog barkers?
Right. Well, we love dogs, but that has nothing to do with this. WOOF stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, and it's basically a farmer and volunteer matching program. It's run on a website. There's basically a database where farmers post their volunteer opportunities, and volunteers can join the website and look for farms where they might be traveling or where they're living. And it's basically an work exchange program.
Yeah, so you work on a farm in exchange for room and board, basically. And we are about to be WOOF hosts. Over the pandemic, one of the projects we put up was we put up a third yurt, which will be housing for woofers and long-term volunteers, as well as artists in residence, which I think is the next question. So I'll talk about that more in a second. But yes, we are hoping to start hosting WOOF volunteers very soon. We've been pretty cautious over the pandemic about kind of bringing new people into the community, and are thinking we'll be able to do that very soon, which is hopeful. The next question, can you tell us how you incorporate the arts into this project?
Cool. So we teach arts in local schools. So we're in every 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classroom in the district as teaching artists. And it's a visual arts curriculum. So we are teaching art history, art theory, art technique, but we're also, it kind of has an environmental bent to it. So when we're studying color theory in the fall, we go out and look at fall leaves and talk about the science of why leaves change color. And then we do, you know, a color study of those color transitions and warm and cool colors. I think our definition of what eco arts is very broad and always changing. But I think it's really whenever any way that an artist wants to work with us in collaboration with any of the projects we're doing here, often there's some link to be found between art and the environment. It's sort of a natural pairing in a lot of ways. A lot of art is a reflection of nature and society, right? So for instance, we did a collaborative project in the community. There's a river right here, the Pajaro River. It was one of the most polluted rivers in the country, but there was a big rehabilitation project. They reintroduced steelhead to the river, and they're thriving now after a lot of effort and a lot of work. So we wanted to celebrate that. It's sort of a hopeful thing. So we did a community mural on that bridge. It was also on a website as one of the ugliest bridges in America because there was a lot of graffiti. And now it's a beautiful mural with these very colorful steelhead trout that the community all came together and painted a fish and dedicated fish to beloved community members. And it was a really cool sort of beautification project and community empowerment project, and an opportunity for environmental education. And also, of course, everyone got to paint and be involved in a really cool art project.
We also like to think about kind of creating the next generation of ecologically minded culture makers. So it's like, how can we inspire the next generation of artists to kind of be thinking about their role in society, and when they're using their art to create social change, how can we make sure that ecology and the environment gets incorporated into those art movements? Are you still renting out overnight lodging? Yes, we are. We host farm stays. We would love for you to come join us here. We also host retreats. So yeah, we are still renting out lodgings, and we'd love for you to come stay in that yurt we showed you.
Yeah, I feel like this might be a good opportunity to say our website is terracultura.org. And that's the place to go to connect with us. And if you're interested in booking a farm stay, or if you're interested in potentially coming up and volunteering or anything like that, our website is the best way to get in touch with us.
Great. How can those of us on Zoom support Terra Cultura? Thank you for asking that question. You can go to our website. Our website is Rabbi Devorah just dropped it in the chat, terracultura.org. Thank you, Rabbi. We would be so grateful for your support. And in any way, you can go to our donate button, but also sign up to be a member of our community. Join us for workshops. Come volunteer with us. Come stay with us. Get your hands in the dirt. There are lots of ways to support us.
Yeah, we have a blog and a newsletter. So if you want to just stay up to date on what we're doing, we try and make those interesting and entertaining and educational. So yeah, feel free to sign up and stay in touch with us.
And especially during COVID, a lot of our events are both either solely virtual or hybrid virtual and in person. So even if you can't make it up to the Central Coast to participate in our events, you probably can get involved. We host them on Zoom. So yeah, there's definitely lots of ways to get involved.
We facilitate a writers group once a month. It's next Tuesday. If there are any aspiring or established writers in the group, you're all invited.
See, do any of the artists collaborate with artists down here in San Diego?
Good question.
Let's see. We certainly have in the past. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, one of our board members lives in San Diego, and she's an amazing artist, and she's done pretty much all the art for our website and our thank you cards. She's working on a recipe book right now in collaboration with Dr. Lynn Thrope at the Reading Room, who we know from Emanuel. And she's also working right now on the map for our Scavenger Hunt. This is a new program we're launching next month. That's a COVID safe way for people to engage with the land. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure, self-guided educational scavenger hunt that also has eco arts elements, community building elements. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and in addition to that, any other artists that might be interested in getting involved, I think Jessica might have alluded to it earlier. We're about to start an artist residency here on site, which will be open to anybody all over the country or the world, really. And that's basically we have a yurt dedicated to that. So there's lodging, and we have food, and an exchange. Working on some kind of project here, whatever medium you call your own, and just finding a way to give back to the community is kind of the exchange that we're looking for that artist residency. But if any artists are interested, definitely visit our website and get in touch.
Yeah, I think looks like all the questions for now. And then I think just to close out, we all wanted to touch a little bit on what we hoped Terra Cultura would be for the world. I think we all hope that kind of moving forward, that Terra Cultura will be kind of the beginning of some ripple effects. Nothing we're doing here is new or unique. We're part of a movement inspired by, people who came before us. A lot of the practices are inspired by Indigenous practices and other folks who have started, kind of back to the land movements, where we take much inspiration from all of that, but we also know that every community kind of has to adapt this and change it to make it their own, to make it work for their own community. So we're hoping that we can be inspiration, and like Rachel mentioned earlier, kind of a sandbox, and that what we're doing here will kind of have ripple effects out into the world. Does anyone else want to talk about visions for the future?
Yeah, I like being a beacon or being an example, because in our travels around the world, we have had the unique opportunity to be able to engage with lots of other farmers, lots of other homesteaders, lots of other intentional villages, lots of other eco agroecologists, and we were just so inspired by so many of them. So I personally, and I know these guys too, just see this as an opportunity to give back to that, and hopefully inspire other people to re-examine their lives and with an eye towards sustainability and holistic systems.
I know right now is a very important time to be thinking about the intersection of environmental justice and racial justice. And that's something we're really incorporating into our curriculum and our practices as an organization. So we're working towards this being a place where those two conversations can really flourish and grow, and explore sort of models of existing in community in diverse communities and in the land that are not oppressive. So kind of finding a new way or a renewed way of existing in community and with the land. So we imagine this being a really thriving community space with a lot of abundance, where at any given time there's lots of food just hanging off plants and branches for the taking. There's music playing. We have visions of doing an amphitheater and be able to have like live shows and theater. There's sort of lots of long-term dreams, artist studios, photography, dark room. What else are some of the dreams?
The field of dreams.
Yeah, we have the back slope of the property right now is a lot of eucalyptus, which is a non-native species that you're probably familiar with, and it's also a fire hazard. So it's beautiful, makes lovely essential oil, but is competing a lot with native habitat. So we have a dream to kind of rehabilitate the native oak savanna habitat here. So we call the back slope sort of our field of dreams. Eventually we will get to that.
and we want this to be of the community. So anyone who wants to come up here and be a part of Terra Cultura, we would love to have you. We really want this to be kind of what the community needs, and we see all of you as part of our Terra Cultura community. Welcome. And so please come participate, come make it your own. We would love, just the influence of everybody in the community on this place. We don't think of it as ours. We think of it as belonging to the community. So please come be a part of it. Help us create a vision. And just the other piece of it is, that's a lot that we're talking about. And we hope that this will be a multi-generational project. We're hoping, we all kind of are guided by this want to be good ancestors, thinking about future generations and what we can put in place now that will make a better world for the future, and how we can kind of start moving in that direction, keep things moving in that direction. I think there were a few other questions.
I think Devora is.
So this has been completely amazing. We're a couple minutes from wrapping up now. If you have questions that you didn't get to have answered, or you were feeling a little bit timid to ask, we are going to be meeting back again with our friends from Terra Cultura at 4 p.m. during the Limmud breakout sessions hour. And one of the things that we're hoping, so Rabbi Lawson is going to facilitate that session, because Rabbi Bench and I will be leading the children's service. And one of the things that I'm hoping that someone will ask, and that you'll all show up again to hear, is how can we who live in a more urban, suburban environment be satellite partners to Terra Cultura, and working locally to sort of enact some of the same important environmental preservations here. We have two master gardeners here in our congregation who, I don't know probably most people haven't noticed, we turned because it's been a pandemic, but we were able to transform our upper planters where we have the trees into an edible garden. Thank you, Frank Borkat, for partnering with me to do that. And so both of our congregants, I'm sure, will happily give tours of their properties, maybe making sure everyone's vaccinated or when they feel safe to do so. But they've done in the past and probably will do again. But I think that would be a great conversation for the second hour, is to talk about ways that we can bring these same things here, so that we're supporting the work of Terra Cultura and of land rehabilitation and environmental preservation, right, literally from our own backyards. And as is in the case of our other master gardener, Nancy Hertzfeld-Pipkin, who's also on this call, from our front yards too. Because while front yards are often just wasted space with tons of water sucking grass, Nancy's turned hers into a whole closed system garden, so an edible garden, and it's amazing. So I think that'd be great, some great conversation along with whatever questions we have for the second hour. I am so thankful to all of you for bringing us on this tour. I feel like you're recreating, as soon as you said, and a dark room for film development, it's like, oh my gosh, they are rebuilding Camp Swig. And I could not be happier, because Camp Swig of blessed memory is not Camp Swig anymore. It doesn't exist. So, thank God someone is resurrecting it. So I would love to, I cannot wait to come up and to bring some kids, and we'll make some Jewish eco art, or some adults. We can do an adult retreat weekend too. And I'm just thankful to you guys. And because I won't be there for the second hour, I just want to say a huge, huge thank you for making yourselves available to us. I think when we think about the problems facing the world, and environmental degradation, and rising sea levels, and the death of, we're having massive die-off of pollinator populations, and it feels so overwhelming, and it's like, oh my God, how can I do anything in the face of all of this? And we actually can do a lot in the face of all of this. So hopefully we'll get some idea generating and some inspiration happening in the second hour. It'll probably be a smaller group second hour because we have 2 other offerings that are also wonderful and excellent. But if we record it, if you guys don't mind recording it again, then we can just throw it up onto the website to make it available for everyone who wants to be in more than one place at the same time, such as myself. So thank you all for attending and for coming so that we could have, I feel like my soul has been nourished just being farm adjacent with our Terra Cultura family. So this was very inspiring and wonderful. And yes, we're getting echoes for please record the second hour. So I'll leave it to you guys to say a closing word, but thank you for being a blessing and bringing this blessing onto our screens and our lives today.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been such a pleasure to be here with all of you.
Yeah, it's such a treat to be back with the Emmanuel community, and blessing in disguise that Zoom has allowed us to do this. So thank you again. And thank you to all of you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Yeah, this is the unexpected blessing of, I never would have looked into Zoom seriously prior to the pandemic because I still keep a paper pencil calendar. So this is such a blessing. So thank you all. And we will see you at 4 o'clock, some of you.
Thank
or
you
when
so
we come
much.
visit the farm.
Thanks, everyone.
Shana Tova.
Thanks, everyone.
Shana Tova.